Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for November 20th, 2024. Today I'm going to be talking about what some people are calling the Biden legacy. And the people who support Biden, which are a dwindling number, say that he stood firm in defense of democracy and freedom in Ukraine, in the Middle East, and elsewhere. Well, in reality, his legacy may be that he's presiding over the final collapse of the Western Empire. That we see this in terms of the idiocy of the attempt to escalate a war against Russia using Ukraine, a war which is unwinnable. And by releasing Ukraine to fire attack of missiles into Russia, all he's doing is bringing us closer to an inevitable military confrontation with Russia. The first missiles were launched yesterday, and as we reported, the experts are saying this won't change the war. This is not going to allow Zelensky to win. It's not even going to improve his bargaining position. But they're going with this anyway. Now, this is in spite of the new Russian doctrine, which says that a country which is involved in attacking Russia, a nuclear or non-nuclear country, is susceptible to a nuclear counterstrike by Russia. Not that Putin is preparing to do that, but that it makes it absolutely clear that this is unacceptable. Now, it's also clear that the Ukrainians cannot use these missiles on their own. The targeting and launching are being directed and run by Western forces, especially American, which means the United States has now become a party in this war. So it's no longer a proxy war. It's actually emerging as a US-NATO war against Russia. Now, what's the intent of Biden besides the people who control him, including Blinken and Jake Sullivan with on-the-scene control? They're obviously saying to him that he is standing firm for democracy. This is his legacy. But what they're using this is to try to force Trump to stick with the policy of war, and at the same time to force Putin to fall into a trap. Now, only an establishment which believes in its own arrogant fantasies would be willing to go down in this potentially suicidal direction. But that just shows you how arrogant and detached from reality they are. They think they are the masters of the universe. Now, what's interesting is Donald Trump gave a very strong response on November 18th. So far, I haven't found it in the US press. I found it in the video from yesterday of Judge Napolitano and his discussion with Gilbert Doctorow. So if you can't find it anywhere else, I would urge you to go there. Defending Freedom, the Napolitano broadcast on YouTube. And it has the clip of Trump. And what he said is that we're closer to World War III today than ever before. I'm going to paraphrase what he said because it's actually important to get the idea across, but people should listen to it because I think it will show you the degree to which Trump was serious when he said during his campaign, he's going to put an end to these wars. Now, here's what he said. He said, Biden is unleashing potential for death and destruction unmatched in human history. It would be a nuclear Armageddon. Now, I'm not going to be giving you exact quotes unless I say they're exact, but it is the content of what he said. He said, we're heading toward a nightmare with this proxy war in Ukraine being escalated. And he said, we must have a total cessation of hostilities. We need peace without delay and a commitment to dismantle the entire globalist neocon establishment, which is perpetually dragging us into endless wars, pretending to fight for freedom and democracy. Very important that he put that in there because it shows the extent to which the Biden message, or the collective Biden message, is rejected by not only Trump, but millions of people. He said we need to completely overhaul the departments of state, defense, the intelligence community, and we have to finish the process of reevaluating NATO's purpose and mission. And he said the war policy, and again, this is very important, the war policy is based on the lie that Russia represents our greatest threat. And he has a reference there to John Quincy Adams' famous statement, where Trump says we should stop chasing monsters and phantoms overseas. So clearly a strong statement. And he goes on to say that the neocon globalists, with their policy, which is the Biden policy, are doing more damage to our country than Russia and China could have ever dreamed of doing. Now, keep in mind, Trump was just elected in a very large electoral victory. Why? One of the reasons is that he consistently attacked the war in Ukraine, attacked these foreign entanglements, which have absolutely no security benefit to the United States. So if you really believe in democracy and freedom, then how can you allow a senile president who can barely walk across the room take orders from his staffers to launch World War III? Now, meanwhile, Putin is not going to fall into the trap. He is moving toward establishing a new security architecture, what he calls an indivisible security for all nations. And as the ATACMS were fired yesterday, the Western missiles that hit a cache of arms in Russia, the Russians report that 5 of the 6 missiles were shot down. But while that was going on, Putin signed a new decree, which is of a new nuclear doctrine, and it reinforces what he said in his speech on September 12th, where he said that Russia now has the right to respond with nuclear force against countries that are attacking it, whether those countries themselves have nuclear weapons or not. A reference to the fact that Ukraine doesn't have nuclear weapons, but the US, France, and Britain do. And that if they're using conventional weapons to target Russia, and it does threaten Russia's sovereignty and security, Putin reserves the right to respond with nuclear force. Now, this is not meant as a bluff. He's trying to get across to these Western leaders how serious this is. And it does go back to this question again of who makes the policy? Who's determining this? Since the leading Democratic Party figures concluded correctly that it was a mistake for Biden to run for re-election and that he should be put out to pasture. Well, now that he's pretty much out to pasture, he's on the beach, he's gobbling down a lot of ice cream, probably sniffing a lot of little girls' hairs. Who's making the policy? And did you vote for this? Did you vote for a World War III and a nuclear war? It's never been put on the ballot for you. To the extent it was, the American voters elected Donald Trump as an anti-war candidate. So those who voted to oust the Biden-Harris regime, which was really Obama 2.0 or Clinton 3.0 or even Carter 4.0, given that Brzezinski and his warped view of the world was it has shaped the outlook of Blinken and Sullivan, the Democratic Party warhawks. If you were part of the voters who voted them out, stay mobilized. We need to keep organizing. And we need to keep organizing not just as an anti-war movement, but to get beyond the existing unipolar world and replace it with one which has a new security and development architecture that can work with the rest of the world, whether it's the global south, whether it's the BRICS, whether we can pull Europe out of its downspin, including pulling Germany out from down the toilet. That's going to require Americans going beyond simply anti-war to return to a tradition of a commitment to anti-colonial economic development. And I would urge you to register, use the link in the description section below to register for the December 7th and 8th conference of the Schiller Institute. So that's my report for today. Don't buy this story about the Biden legacy. It's really the last gasp of a dying empire.